The word budget could easily be the second most hated B word in the English language. And there are a lot of reasons why that's the case, but for most people, the reason they do not like the word budget is because it feels restrictive. On top of that, there's so many ways to go about budgeting your money, it's hard to decide which one's going to be the best one for you. But despite all of the negative that comes with budgeting, it is necessary to build a solid financial plan. The purpose of having a budget is to understand how your money moves. For most people, they know where their money comes from and they receive it on a weekly, bi weekly, semi monthly, or a monthly basis. But for most of those people, they don't know where their money is going. What I need you to do is to change your perspective on money. As opposed to it being something that causes you stress, I want you to look at it as more of a tool. And the purpose of this tool is to help you build your wealth and ultimately achieve some level of financial independence. Without a budget, or at least a base level of understanding of how your money moves, it's very difficult to know what tools you have available to you to build that wealth. In this video, we're going to get into budgeting and, more specifically, the exact method that I use on my path to financial independence. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Financial Wellness Planning. My name is Derek Coffey, and I'm the founder of FWP. And if you've clicked on this video and you're still watching to this point, then I can only assume you're looking for a better way to manage your money. Unfortunately, budgeting is really the only way to really get a grip on what your money is doing. To me, budgeting is very much like dieting. It's emotionally draining, it feels restrictive, but the only way to make a meaningful change when it comes to either your physical health or your financial health, you have to dig into the specifics. Successful budgeting requires wiggle room and a little bit of grace. You're never going to be perfect with your money. Your monetary situation is never going to be perfect. There's always something that's going to come up. But if you set yourself up with guardrails, or in our case, percentages, then you can set yourself up to have the freedom that you need to stay on track. The reason that budgeting is so important is because it is the cornerstone of any solid financial plan. If you think of financial planning as a pyramid, the very base of that pyramid is your cash flow and your net worth. Once you have a good understanding of what your money is doing and what your net worth actually is, that's when you can start setting goals. Once you figure out what your goals are, that's what's going to determine how much money you need to save and where exactly you need to save it. And then at the very top of that pyramid is the protection aspect, or the insurances, and we're going to go over those in their own videos. But if you think of financial planning as a pyramid, then your budget is what sets the tone for everything you do going forward. There are endless ways that you can go about managing your money, and I've listed a couple of them out on the screen. The first one is the all cash method, where you do everything that you possibly can with cash, and once you run out of cash for that specific category, then you can't spend any more money on it. You can use the envelope method. You could also use a zero-based method where every dollar that you bring in is accounted for, or it has a purpose. The final one is the 50-30-20. And this was popularized by Senator Elizabeth Warren, but it doesn't really fit in today's times. Before the pandemic, the 50-30-20 was a really good rule to follow. But because of the increase in the cost of living, I don't think the 50-30-20 fits anymore. Now, one of the things that I enjoy about a 50-30-20 method is that it gives you those percentages. And percentages are meant to be flexible. You may have months where you go over a little bit on one and you're under a little bit on another. But at the end of the month, it should equal out to you either breaking even or hopefully having a small surplus. But with each of these methods, they have their own issues. With the all cash method, cash is becoming non-existent. People don't use cash anymore. They either use their card or they tap with their phone. Not to mention, if you're carrying around a significant amount of cash to go do your shopping, then it's very easy for someone to just take it from you. So the all cash method may not be the best one. When we get to the envelope method, it's good, but it just requires too much work. With the zero-based method, it is also good, but it requires too much thought. With the 50-30-20 method, like we said earlier, it doesn't really fit, not in 2024. The cost of living is entirely too high to force yourself to live on 50% of your income. Now, I want you to keep in mind that all of these methods do work, but it's up to you to pick the one that's going to work best for you. Whatever makes it the easiest for you to manage your money, that's the one you're most likely going to stick with. The method that I use personally is what's known as the 70-15-15 method. And this is an improvement over the 50-30-20, especially with the cost of living being as high as it is. And it's really good for people that are just starting out. So if you just graduated college or you just graduated high school and you're in that entry level position, then your needs-based spending is probably going to take up a larger percentage of your income. So if you're just starting out, being able to allocate 70% of your after-tax money to those needs is going to give you that wiggle room that you need to feel. Now, if you're trying to turn your financial life around and you have a lot of debt and you have poor spending habits, then the 70-15-15 may be a good option for you as well. Now, I did not come up with the 70-15-15 method. It was actually coined by Nicole Lapin. She wrote a book, and it's all about the 12 steps of getting your finances in order. But in that book, she talks about this method. The way that it breaks down is 70% of your after-tax income or your net income is what you spend on your needs. 15% of your after-tax income is spent on savings, and then the other 15% you get to enjoy however you wish. So what we do need to establish is what is a need and what is a want. Now, I personally feel that needs and wants aren't as black and white as other people make it seem. There are needs that have to be met. You have to have a place to live, you have to have food to eat, you have to make your minimum debt payments, you have to put fuel in your car. You have other needs that may be considered a want by some people, but you may actually need them in your life. For instance, going to the gym. If you have a gym membership and you actively use that gym membership, then it's a need. It is your outlet. It's the way for you to be healthy and relieve stress. So just because a gym membership may be viewed as a want by some people, there are some people that they need that outlet. And it's the same thing on the want side. With the wants, that's how you enjoy life. That's how you enjoy the money that you work for. Whether you go traveling or you go to the movies all the time or you go out to eat a bunch, your wants are your ways to enjoy life. What I want you to understand is that these will begin to overlap. And what happens in this overlap is what's known as lifestyle creep. That house that you live in that might only be 2,000 square feet, you may not need to upgrade it to a 3,000 square foot home just because you make more money. That used car that you're driving around doesn't need to be upgraded to a brand new car. If you do need to upgrade it, just upgrade it to a good used one. On the want side of things, your dining out habits may change. You might start going to a little bit nicer restaurants. Your travel habits may change. Instead of going to the local state park or going to a local beach, you might start going on cruises more often. You might start traveling out of the country more often. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to downplay the need of taking trips and having that release, but I don't want you to do all of these things at the expense of your financial well-being. In that overlapping area, don't let lifestyle creep in. Upgrade where you need to upgrade, but start taking some of that additional money that you're earning and funnel it into your savings. So we understand what a need is, we understand what a want is, and we understand that lifestyle creep is something we want to keep at bay as much as possible. The next thing we need to go over is what do we do with that savings portion of your income? Well, if you make less than the Roth income limits, then there is an optimal order to saving your money. What you see on your screen are the 7 steps to saving money if you make less than those income limits. And I have a whole video that goes over this more in depth, but I'm going to glance over it now just so you understand the options that are available to you. The first stop is going to be your emergency fund, and I'm not talking about 3 or 6 months of your income. I'm talking about $1,000 per person in your household. Once you have that set aside in the bank, then we move on to your employer-sponsored account. With that account, you're going to put in enough money to receive your full employer match. Once you're receiving the full employer match, you're going to start focusing on your high-interest debt and getting rid of it as soon as you possibly can. Once you get rid of that debt, you move on to the Roth IRA. Once you're maxing the Roth, you look into the HSA. Now, I want you to keep in mind the HSA isn't for everyone. You need to be on a high deductible health plan to be eligible for a health savings account. This isn't going to fit everyone's situation, but if it does, the HSA is a really good savings option. Once you've maxed the HSA, then we're going to look at your employer-sponsored account again. Now, we do need to take into account your tax situation in the present and what you could expect into the future. But if it works out, then what we're going to focus on is maxing out your 401k. And then if you've completed all 6 of the previous steps, we're going to look at paying off all of your debt. Now, you can leave your mortgage alone if you locked in a 3.5% or 4% interest rate. But all of your non-mortgage related debt, I want you to focus on getting rid of it. To really get a grip on your money, I want you to do it manually first. I'm well aware of all of the budgeting apps that exist. The issue with those apps is there's no pain associated to spending money anymore. We don't use cash, so you don't feel that physical pain of the money leaving your pocket. We tap a card, we tap a phone, we Venmo money back and forth to each other, but we don't feel that physical discomfort of actually spending that money. So to reintroduce that pain and force yourself to get into the specifics of your money, I want you to do it manually first. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to print out all of your statements, all of your bank statements, all of your credit card statements. You're then going to grab 4 highlighters. Ideally, they're all different colors. You're going to highlight your income. You're going to highlight your needs-based spending. You're going to highlight your wants-based spending. And then you're going to highlight your savings. You're going to total all of those categories up. Once you figure out what those totals are, you're going to divide your needs-based spending by your net income. You're going to divide your wants-based spending by your net income. And then you're going to divide your savings by your net income. Then you're going to take those percentages and figure out what it's going to take for you to get into that 70-15-15 spending method. So to try and make this a little bit clearer, we're going to work through a quick example. So let's say you pull all of your bank statements and your net income for the month was $6,000. Your needs-based spending was $4,350, your wants-based spending was $1,200, and your savings was $450. If we take each of those figures and divide it by your net income, we can come up with your percentages. Your needs-based spending is going to come in at 72.5%. Your wants-based spending is going to come in at 20%. And then your savings percentage is going to come in at 7.5%. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take those percentages and figure out what adjustments need to be made to get them to the 70-15-15. So your needs-based spending is over by 2.5%. We need to shave off a little bit of your needs-based spending. And there are a couple of ways you can go about doing this. You could shop around your cable and internet provider. You could also consider getting rid of your cable package altogether. If you only watch a certain number of channels, you might be able to find a streaming option that's much cheaper but provides to you the channels that you actually use. You could also shop your home and auto insurance. If you haven't done that in a while, you should do so. Rates have gone up astronomically. So if you haven't had your coverages quoted within the last 3 to 5 years, you may be missing out on savings. The next area that we're going to look at cutting spending is in the wants-based spending category. The reason we're going to focus on wants-based spending specifically is because that's the one you have the most control over. That's the one where you're spending the money on the things that you want to do. For a lot of people, their wants-based spending is their biggest issue. They either go out to eat too much, they travel too much, or their hobbies are quite expensive. And I'm not telling you to get rid of all of those things. I just want you to scale them back so that way your spending fits within that 15% threshold. If you go out to eat a lot, cut it in half. I'm not discounting the convenience of going out to eat, because having to plan a meal, shop for the groceries, cook the meal, and then ultimately clean up takes up a lot of time, and for most people, a lot of valuable time because their schedules are very busy. But if you scale back some of your dining out spending, that's the money that you're going to start funneling into savings. Maybe instead of going on that cruise or going out of the country, you go to a local state park and maybe go for a hike. It's much cheaper than the travel that's associated with some of those other options. As opposed to golfing 3 times a week, maybe you cut it back to 2 or 1, depending on what you need to do to get your spending in order. But I want you to focus on your wants-based spending because that is the one that you have the most control over. So if we trim off 2.5% from our needs-based spending, we trim off 5% of our wants-based spending, we take the 7.5% and we move it right over to our savings. Once you're consistently hitting the 70-15-15 method, then start looking for ways to make it even better. At some point, ideally, you make it to a 60-20-20. But using the 70-15-15, it is a great place to start. Look, budgeting sucks. I hate it. Everyone hates it. Just like dieting. I hate dieting. Feels like everybody I know hates dieting. But with physical fitness, you can't outwork a bad diet. With your financial fitness, you can't out earn bad money habits. Getting a handle on your money is what's going to set you up for financial success. Ultimately, it's going to get you to financial independence. But you have to get your hands dirty and figure out what your money is doing. That way, you know what tools you have available to you to build that wealth. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If this video or any of the other videos that I've put out has provided you value, then hit that subscribe button. If you know someone whose finances are completely out of whack and they don't know where to start, then send this video to them. Maybe it'll help them out. But I thank you again for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.